It is written in stone that all trading card games must evolve or perish. With the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise going on strong after a great run with Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds, it was inevitable that another spin-off takes its place like Kariba with Multiply. Thus, Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexel was born, named after the English word zeal, which means great energy or enthusiasm in pursuit of a cause or object. Like 5Ds, the series was made to promote the new summoning mechanic, XZ Summon and XZ Monsters. But is the third spin-off series of Yu-Gi-Oh! Able to repeat the success of its predecessor? Can it feel the flow of what worked in the past, understand what didn't work, and keep the game fresh? Let's see how the new era kicks off. Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexel in the TCG would officially start on July 12th with the starter deck, Dawn of the XZs. That's XZs, pronounced like Exceed. Don't ask me why Konami came up with such an unorthodox spelled name. It was probably the same guy who renamed Hurricane to Great Tornado to Giant Trunade. Anyways, yes, this was the set that introduced XZ Summoning and XZ Monsters to the game. This is a new extra deck mechanic that includes monster cards that are colored black with a space background. You summon them by overlaying two monsters with the same level and placing the XZ monster on top. The attached cards become known as XZ Material, where they can be used for the XZ monster's effect. This can be applied such as staying equipped for an attack gain or detached from the card to the grave to activate an additional effect. Think of it like a weird equip gimmick. Another unique element is that these monsters don't have a level. Rather, they have a rank that determines the level of monsters they needed to be summoned. As such, this means you can't use these cards for Ritual, Synchro, or XZ Summoning. On the flip side, this also means cards like Gravity Bind or Level Limit don't affect them either. This was a great addition to the game on paper. Any deck could run them, as you didn't need a tuner monster to produce a powerful summon. The freshman lineup only consisted of 3 monsters: Gachi Gachi Gantetsu, a rank 2 that can detach a material to prevent destruction, plus all monsters you control gain 200 attack and defense for each material attached to Gachi. Next is Granosaurus, a rank 3 that after destroying a monster in battle, you can detach a material to inflict 1000 damage. Finally, we have number 39, Utopia, a rank 4 that can detach to negate an attack, or if Utopia is targeted for an attack while it has no materials, Utopia is destroyed. As you can see, the original 3 were made to ensure duelists can summon easier using low-level monsters. Suddenly, those gadgets can become a 2500 beater. That said, would the new mechanic make a large splash at the next YCS? Following the starter deck was Zexel's first event at YCS Indianapolis on August 6. With the deck not creating any major archetype or blowout cards, many of the topping decks were a familiarity. There were tops from Gadget, Gear Valley Stun, Agent, and TG Stun. The top 3 were 3rd place Gravekeeper by Dalton Boozman, 2nd place Synchro Plant by Joseph Ranzo, and 1st place being another Synchro Plant deck by Robert Boyajian. Since the Synchro strategy was just as good as it was at the end of the 5Ds era, it made all the sense in the world to stay with the tested deck. However, considering how generic and only needed one basic requirement, most decks could play the new XZ monsters immediately. Most duelists ended up using Granosaurus and Utopia with no more than 3 slots in the extra deck dedicated to the new mechanic. The winning card this time around, from August 2011 through May 2012, would be Blood in the Fist, a synchro with burn capabilities. Konami, reprint this card already! It is important to note that at this event, rulings on XZ monsters weren't in hardcover, and thus there was confusion on if an XZ material was considered on field or not. At Indianapolis, judges ruled that yes, the materials are on field, which means that when you detach cards like Sangan or Reborn Tengu, then their effects do trigger. This gave a new edge to XZs in regard to combo potential and made the Synchro Plant deck all the more powerful. Additional tech to note in direction of the meta was that with the XZ summon, the recently released Tour Guide from the Underworld saw play now. This level 3 fiend with the name translation of Death Guy departing the demon world bound for the living world when normal summon lets you special a level 3 fiend from your hand or deck with its effects negated and banned of being used for synchro material. Well, with the new extra deck monsters that benefit off of the same levels, Guide is now a 1-card Xyz. A popular play was to summon Guide, bring out Sangan, and overlay into Grenosaurus. Due to the additional special summoning capabilities, the also fairly new Max C saw more play too. Despite modern views of the card, back then it wasn't a problem. Sure, duelists could try the Max C challenge and see how many cards they could draw from an opponent who dared to continue their combo, yet it was mainly a check for the occasional big combo synchro deck in an era where most top decks had a tolerable speed. Yes, this is where Max C started seeing main deck play, but this isn't Master Duels, so shut the hell up. Okay, so Xyz had a temperature change for the meta, but nothing catastrophic like the first 5Ds format. Then again, we have yet to see a new banned list as of August 2011, so anything is still possible. Let's say in August a bit longer as the 2011 World Championships on the 13th through the 14th came around. One important change at this event was the implementation of the OCG's Master Rule 2. While the TCG doesn't follow this specifically, it still added the new terminology as it must for Xyz assets. But the one big thing from MR2 was the removal of Ignition Priority. So the priority effect on summoning for cards like Exiled Force, Breaker the Magical Warrior, Tribe Infecting Virus, and Chaos Sorcerer from formats past no longer hold the same power. This was implemented in the OCG, whereas the TCG would still keep priority for quite some time. Yet at Worlds, this was not the case as the event followed the OCG guidelines. All that said, despite the best efforts of decks like Junk Doppel, Machina Gadget, Six Samurai, and more, it was an agent deck by Ogawa Takashi that won the gold for Japan. Was it a big surprise? We discussed in the Trishula video the high ceiling the Lost Sanctuary structure deck brought to the Fairy archetype. It one-upped the Herald strategy, and clearly Konami expected as such when they printed the pre-made deck so late in the 5Ds era, soon before Worlds. A well-rounded deck with archetypal support and general access to the extra deck? Sign me up! It was almost a case of targeted success, especially since the popular Reborn Tengu was originally a TCG exclusive card and thus not available at Worlds, which translated to a suboptimal synchro deck. Hot off Worlds, Agents were the deck to play moving forward, but will the next and first Zexel core set affect anything?
Yugioh Trading Card Game. Wind-up toys. Gigantische zeemonsters. En gloednieuwe zwart omrande Xyz. 100 kaarten voor jouw deck. Yugioh Trading Card Game Generation Force. Nu verkrijgbaar bij Intertoys.
August 16th would see the release of Generation Force. The premiere set would include a new wave of Xyz monsters, most notably in Leviathan Dragon, Leviair the Sea Dragon, and Steel Swarm Roach. These cards would detach for attack gain, special a low-level banish monster, and negate a high-level special summon respectively. There were others like Wind-Up Zenmeister and some rank 5s, but they weren't as successful in the upcoming meta. Regardless, it was enough to spice up the extra deck, even if this primordial harvest wasn't crazy. Certainly not to the current existence of synchros, let alone synchros on arrival. Other notable cards would include A Hero Lives, Mass Change, Goblinberg, and Double or Nothing. Orient Dragon was a new synchro here that can easily take care of other synchros at no cost. The set had an emphasis on heroes and fish with the new archetype in windups. Generation Force also changed remove from play to banish and added piercing damage instead of inflicting the difference between the attack and defense and yada yada yada. Yes, this was the start of booster packs featuring problem-solving card text, even though it technically started in July 2011. This was a way to make all cards have a precise, easy-to-read understanding without making it sound like a textbook. So no more unite the deck or no matter what. It took Konami a few months to hash things out, but by this set, the company was rip-roaring for legibility. Okay, so new set. Big deal. What exactly did Generation Force accomplish? As far as the meta was concerned, better Xyz monsters only meant better options for agents. People consider this to be a tier 0 deck moving forward because now you have a proactive rank 3 for turn 1 in Leviathan Dragon that could detach Sangan and get you an Effect Veiler with an established board before your opponent even enters their first draw phase. By your next turn, you're most likely had a Light and Dark in the grave, and Chaos Sorcerer went to Unlimited in the March 2011 list, so give that a thought. Could you imagine if Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning, was unbanned? I dare not think.
Yugioh であるオフィシャルカードゲームジェネレーションフォーツ発売中。ルールを守って楽しくデュエル。コナミ。
Anyways, moving to the September 2011 list, and BLS was unbanned to limited status. This gave life back to the Chaos strategy as well as Chaos decks. I mean, Armory Arm equipped to BLS could potentially OTK, so this monster from 2004, that's been banned since October 2005 mind you, was still a viable boss in the 2011 meta. The list didn't stop there, as the first Zexel list made many waves. 4 cards were forbidden. Fishborg Blaster and Mind Master for being non-once-per-turn tuners, Giant Trunade for being incredibly strong in back row decks, and Royal Oppression for being such a powerful trap post its ruling change. And with Oppression gone and Special Summoning unlocked, Maxi would gain even more popularity. With Trunade gone, back row removal needed something. That something would come in the unbanning of Heavy Storm to 1 and Mystical Space Typhoon to 3. Given the evident potential of Trunade, Storm was seen as a more fair form of removal because it destroys both Duelist back row and can potentially activate Starlight Road. Now decks like Gravekeeper, TG Stun, and 6 Samurai got hurt. Speaking of which, the Sams were hit with both Shien and Smoke Signal going to 1. The other big deck getting hit was Synchro Plant in ways of Debris Dragon, Lone Fire Blossom, Pot of Avarice, Hyper Librarian, Formula Synchron, and Trishula going to 1. Whoa. Notable semi-limited were Tragoedia to help against monster-heavy decks, Mind Crush to counter agents since they had easier to predict cards in hand, and Summoner Monk and Call of the Haunted to assist with Xyz summoning. Due to ranks now existing, Gravity Bind became safe to get off the list entirely alongside the aforementioned MST. Including all the other changes, did this September 2011 list affect the meta in any major way? Well, right off the bat, yes. The same day as the list dropping, Konami put out a notice that solidified how Xyz materials work. TLDR, materials are not considered on-field, so no more Sangan shenanigans. Thank God. The best way to tell the damage this list caused would be at the next YCS at Toronto on September 17th, 2011. With the new detach rule, agents still held power, whereas Synchro Plant lost a lot of resources, and both Sangan and Reborn Tengu lost power too. But considering there was a new set, Duelists did try out a variety of decks from Kaokuri, Hero Beat, Chaos Plant, Doppel Synchro, X-Saber, Frog Monarch, and even Nordic. This video is sponsored by Nordic VPN. Yet, in the top 32, we'd see 11 Synchro Plant decks, which for the purposes of the Tengu build and this format, I will be calling it Tengu Plant moving forward, and there is also 11 Agent decks. Top 3 specifically would be 3rd place in a tie between Agent by Alexander St. Louis and TG Stun by Tyler Nolan. 2nd place Agent by Nikki Lakyle, I'm just whatever. And 1st place Tengu Plant by Billy Break. Let's break down some of the decks here. At Toronto, there were both a stun and agent variation of the TG deck. Now, you may ask me, Daddy Janjo, you a paragon of the human condition? I thought with Heavy and MST running around, back row decks like TG Stun should be undeniably bad. Well, in most cases, you'd be right. However, in the case of the Tech genus, this was a deck that even with the recent list was hard to duel against. Their solidarity came from more tools than your typical anti-meta strategy. Decks like Gravekeeper solely relied on cards like Necro Valley, Royal Oppression, and Solemn Negates. Even their big beatstick Malefic Stardust Dragon and or Malefic Cyber End Dragon needed a field spell up on field. TG Stun had access to the extra deck, which generically was still exceptional in decks like this. The TG monsters could replace themselves if destroyed by battle, and the deck had unique traps like TG1, EM1, and Horn of the Phantom Beast, which could gain advantage beyond Stun's typical, well, stun gameplay. In other words, this ain't your daddy's stun deck. And then we have the Tengu plant deck, which won the whole event. This variation of the Synchro plant deck was beloved by many duelists even after the deck received heavy hits from the list. A lot of people believed the deck's engine was still solid enough to push through the competition, and clearly they were right. Tengu had more of a presence here since most of the plant cards were limited, and you'd only play one copy of the others due to once per duel clauses like Spore and Glow Up Bulb. If the engine ain't broke, don't fix it, especially if the format had more than enough staples to keep the deck afloat. So let's talk about the staples. 4 of the best summons you could make are Tour Guide from the Underworld as a 1-card rank 3, Reborn Tengu for a floater that works with both control and combo decks, BLS as a splash of power, and Thunder King Ryo that can negate a special summon which, as we've already established, has significantly increased in this era. And to stop some of these cards, Effect Veiler increased in power. When it comes to the back row, the current trinity is Heavy Storm, Dark Hole, and Monster Reborn as generic power cards. Both Mind Control and Enemy Controller gained strength for they could seal monsters and equally deal with threats like Sangan, Tengu, and BLS. Basically, dealing with Tengu is a keynote, as even Book of Moon saw play for that, and to stop extra deck plays in general. After all, you can't Xyz summon using a face-down monster. Then the powerful traps like the Solemns, Torrential Tribute, Mirror Force, and Trap Dust Shoot, you could build quite the fearsome deck. When discussing the extra deck, you're dealing with the best ofs from the 5Ds era. Trishula can win games just by getting rid of 3 of your opponent's cards. Stardust Dragon is still a solid protection. Black Rose Dragon is a great comeback tool to wipe the field, and a variety of others I could go on about. Xyz monster-wise, I've discussed a bit about already, with the most common ones from YCS Toronto being Utopia as a rank 4 beater, Steel Swarm Roach as a rank 4 special summon negator, Leviathan Dragon as a rank 3 proactive detacher and a beater, Levier the Sea Dragon as a rank 3 to bring back banished monsters, and Gachi Gachi Gontetsu as the only rank 2 which may come up. Even though it would be a while before the next list, the next event would be soon after at YCS Columbus in October. But in community discussion, there have been arguments on if this event or the previous one should represent the format. While Columbus was before the next core set, there was one release prior that would affect the meta. In 2022 at YCS Dortmund, there was a Tengu Plant Time Wizard format side event that followed Toronto's card pool, making that the event to follow moving forward. Although that event was recent and as such followed Konami's current policy to allow regional exclusives. This meant previously foreign-only cards like Gallus the Star Beast and Darkness Destroyer were legal. Community-driven play tends to follow the format historically, and since that was a North American event, regional exclusive cards were banned and thus no Gallus, but make sure to contact your local scene to figure out what is going on with that. In summary, Tengu Plant format is one of the most beloved retro formats. It's chock full of checks and balances with interactive gameplay. There's a diverse metagame with no single dominant deck, and all the top decks do have their weaknesses. TG Stun is an issue? Activate Royal Decree to shut off traps. Tengu Plant being an annoyance? Stop their plays with Thunder King or make them take the Max C challenge. This balanced scale allows for more rogue decks to take wins more frequently, and thus skill becomes an important factor. In a lot of regards, this is similar to Edison and GOAT and why people adore this period of time. Though I suppose the argument could be made that in regards to a fresh start for the Zexel era, the Xyz monsters didn't make any major splash with their power, nor any new meta-relevant decks. Regardless, the competitive scene was off to a good start, but one must wonder, can this streak continue throughout the rest of the year? The gates may just be blown wide open.